Hello everybody, welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to be talking about self-hosting Octopus on Linux. So let's start with a little bit of housekeeping. No need to record today's session. We will email you this in the next week or so. We do have 10 minutes at the end of today's webinar for any questions, and myself and Adam will try and answer those. If you are on one of our streams such as YouTube, LinkedIn, etc., we will try and get to your questions. You may be better posting them into octopus.com/Slack and then into the webinar channel. Okay, so today I'm Derek Campbell, same as I am every day, and I'm a senior solutions architect at Octopus Deploy. Today I'm also joined by one of my colleagues, Adam Close. Hey Adam, how are you going today?
I'm really good, thank you, Derek. I'm looking forward to chatting a little bit of Octopus Container. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. This one, I've been looking forward to this one for a while. Obviously
hmm
with the container stuff that we've been doing and using an Octopus Cloud and all that sort of stuff, I think this is going to have a lot of value for today's attendees.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so what are we going to be showing everyone today?
Yeah, we just touched on it. We'll be talking the Octopus Linux container image. Um, it's been about for a while. You probably agree, Derek. We, were, we released it in 2020.6. We made it a full production release and took the EAP flag off. So today we're going to kind of show you how to um, get up and running quickly with the Octopus container using some resources that I built earlier. We're going to take that same Octopus container that we build, and then we're going to upgrade the Octopus container. So we're going to start on one version, upgrade to another one. And last, we're going to finish off just by deploying that Octopus container to Azure AKS. So lots of demos today, Derek. And it's a good time to kind of show this off. Octopus, the company, our cloud service, uses the Octopus container, so it definitely gets tested very well. It's nice to be able to kind of run this locally ourselves now, so we don't have to keep spinning up Windows machines.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key things, wasn't it? It's about really trying to avoid spinning up more virtual machines. There's so many use cases. Obviously you can use it in Octopus Cloud. Great, it's great for upgrading, or even like testing an upgrade, maybe testing some new features. And obviously we'll go through all the use cases of the Linux container.
Yeah, we'll have a chat as we go through.
Excellent, excellent. So, it's demo time.
Kind of get building the container. Let's kind of take you around, show you where the actual container which is stored. So you can find it in Docker Hub. It's an Octopus Deploy repository. I will be putting the links afterwards for you to get at in the recording. So let's firstly go down. First thing I do want to point out, you can see we've got the Windows container and the Linux container. We have very recently deprecated the Windows container in 2021 .1 release. Reason being the uptake of it wasn't great, and Microsoft have actually deprecated the images that we built that container on. So if you are using the Windows container, it's fine. You'll still be able to use the current version. It's just you won't be able to get to any version past 2020.6. So cool. So we're going to be using the Linux container today. Um, and we're also going to be using Docker Compose to actually build out our containers. So Octopus, we need the Octopus Deploy container. We also need a backend database, so we'll use a SQL Server container for that as well. So Docker Compose is an excellent tool for that. I can spin both containers up. Have you had any experience with Docker Compose, Derek? Some more YAML for you.
Obviously, as much as I love YAML, I actually haven't used Compose. I've tended just to do Docker pull, run, etc. I'm a bit like yourself. I'm not by all means a container expert, but so what is Docker Compose and why would we use it?
Yeah, Docker Compose is great. It's kind of allows orchestration of multiple containers in Docker. So rather than okay, let's take Octopus for example. We've got Octopus Deploy container, and we need a SRE container. Rather than pulling both images and then running both containers, we can just tidy this up into a nice YAML file and just kind of let Docker Compose create that in Docker for us.
Awesome.
Yeah, you touched on something there as well, which I kind of want to follow on to about not being a Docker expert. I won't classify myself as a Docker or container expert or a Kubernetes expert. One of the things with this webinar is I kind of want to show how easy it is just to get up and running with the Octopus Docker container. So if you're a bit put off by Docker, you've not used it before, don't worry, I'm going to give you all the resources to get you up and running with a few clicks of a button.
I think that's one of the real benefits of this webinar is neither of us are Docker or Kubernetes experts, but we're able to
Mm-hmm.
get it up and running
Yeah.
with Docker and Kubernetes. So
Yes.
yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's a great point. So yes, I'm gonna go. I've taken this Docker Compose YAML, so I'm just taking the resources that are on Docker Hub, and I'm going to be using those today. The Docker Compose YAML also has a corresponding .env file for our environment variables. So what you'll see here, let's take accept EULA. We need to accept the EULA when we start the container. We can see this little parameter here, accept Octopus EULA. When I get these built, it will replace it will replace the values from the .env file. Just a nice way to tidy up environment variables. But we're going to go through these a little more in a second when I start building the containers. So cool. I'm going to just jump straight in now and go and open VS Code. So the first demo, I am deploying to my local Docker desktop. I have the images already downloaded. So I've got two. I've got the Octopus Deploy 2020.6 container. I've also got the latest, which will be 2021.1, whichever the latest build number is. As you can see, they are quite large, over 4 gig, so I didn't want to be taking too much of the time and making a lot of wait for these images to download. So I pre-downloaded those. I'm sure you didn't want to watch me just downloading files or webinar, Derek.
What, you mean you don't like watching stuff download for 10 minutes?
Not with my Wi-Fi speed, no.
That's true.
So you can see container and apps. I've got nothing running. Yeah, so let's start getting these containers built. So jump into VS Code. So I've got my workspace open. I've got this local.octopus folder up and running. So as I said before, I've got the Docker Compose YAML, and I want to start taking you through some of these, this actual YAML and what it's doing. So first of all, services. There's two services. Just want to say services, they're going to be containers. We've got the DB service, the image that we're going to pull for the SQL container, the SA password, the EULA, the port. So the port is going to map on my local machine 1401. It's going to map, obviously, it's 1433. This is the Linux SQL container image. So all Linux today, Derek.
Awesome. It's a brave new world, Adam, isn't it? Running MS SQL and Octopus on a Linux stack.
Yes, definitely. I never thought I'd ever be using Linux as much and enjoying it as much. So yeah, volume as well. Got a SQL volume to store obviously the SQL databases. Then the second service is our Octopus server. This is going to be the Octopus container. Again, the image. I'm going to take you through these variables, environment variables in a second. I'll again take you through all these in just a second. Ports. So we need to open 2 ports, or maybe even 3, for Octopus Deploy. So first of all, we need a port to access the web UI for Octopus Deploy, so you can log in and create all your projects and your deployments. Octopus has a concept of deployment targets. Those deployment targets communicate over either 109.3.3 if it's a listening tentacle or 109.4.3. So we do need to map another port for that. I'm just using 109.4.3 today. We're not going to be deploying 20 deployment targets, but I think it's still good practice to add that port in. Volumes for Octopus, not everything is stored in the SQL database. Some items are stored to the disk. We've got artifacts, task logs, cache, import, and then repository. So Octopus comes with a built-in package repository. They need to be stored on the disk, so we just need to mount those volumes to the container. They are going to be tied to the container, so when the container gets shut down, the volumes will go. If you ever want to run this container in production, please use a durable storage. That's going to be long lasting. Cool. So what I'm going to do is just go through those environment variables now. I think it's quite important. This is where it kind of makes the Octopus container a little bit different in terms of how it works. So first of all, we've got the SA password. That's the SQL password. I'm not going to go too much in detail on that. You can see my super strong password. Octopus tag. So this is the version that I want to pull from Docker Hub. I'm just going to go up and just go back into Docker Hub. Let's jump into tags. So you've got the latest. We've got 2020.6. I'm going to pull 2020.6 because in the next demo, I'm actually going to upgrade the Octopus database container and spin up a new, the latest Octopus container image. Cool. So I'm going to SQL Server image. That's the Linux SQL Server image that we're using. Admin username and password. These are the login credentials for Octopus Deploy. I'm going with admin and a super strong password of password123. Please make your passwords more secure than that. I know Derek's going to tell me off.
My eyes are twitching, but obviously it is a demo. I'll let this one slide, but yes, word to everyone, please use a better password.
Yeah, the good thing is this is my local Docker desktop, which will be destroyed soon after this demo. Just makes it easy for me to type. I have a tendency of mistyping things on these demos. Admin email, so an email to associate to the user that you create with admin username and password. I'll leave that blank for now. If you don't have an Octopus license, so Octopus is a licensed product. It is free for up to 10 deployment targets. And if you don't have a license, if you put your admin email or your email in there, when the container starts, it will try and register a free license for you based on that email address. I already have the license, and we're going to show you how to input that into the environment variables in just a second. Accept the URLs for SQL Server and Octopus Deploy. Octopus server node name. This is how you'd recognize this as Octopus server. If it's blank, it'll use the container name. Try and use something quite friendly. I'm just going to go Octopus server. Database connection. It's a database connection from the Octopus server into the SQL connection to the SQL database. We see there we've got server equals DB and the port that we're connected on, and that's super strong password. So your license key for Octopus Deploy. We have a license key. We can see there it says Octopus Server Base 64 license. I'm just going to jump over this little PowerShell script I've created. This is what a standard Octopus license would look like. You can input that into the Octopus configuration. For the container, it does need to be base 64 encoded. I've just created a little script just to kind of run that, to convert that to base 64. So hopefully this runs and creates me this lovely base 64 encoded string.
Oh, it's super pretty.
Yes, very long. We go back and then paste that into that. Definitely need to scroll on that one.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a fair size of base 64 license key, and definitely a bit on the larger side, Adam.
sneeze then, sorry about that. Okay, cool. Next one, master key. I'm not going to talk too much on the master key right now because we're going to take advantage of that in the next demo. Essentially, the master key for Octopus Deploy encrypts your database. Whenever you create a new Octopus Deploy instance, it will generate a master key. Keep that master key safe. We're going to grab that in a second when we start the container. Now, we don't need for now. Admin API key, we're not going to use that because we've created the username and password for our user. And lastly, we've got this Docker in Docker. So Octopus needs to be able to run Docker in Docker for one of our features, which is execution containers. Octopus has this concept of workers where you can actually run scripts, not on a work on a Linux machine or Windows machine for long-running tasks. And rather than running them directly on a Linux machine or a Windows machine, you can actually spin up another container. So then you've got Docker in Docker in Docker, essentially. So we just need to have that enabled. I'm not using execution containers today, so I'll just leave that as no. And then the last one is the user that the Octopus service is going to run as. So cool. So I'll double check, make sure I put all those files in correctly. I did mention I do have a habit of mistyping things and not saving the environment variables. Cool. So what we're going to do now, we're just going to call Docker compounds. Well, what it's going to do, it's going to use the images that I've already downloaded, and it's going to create my local containers for the SQL container and the Octopus server. Give that a second. We can see this now. So basically, what's happening here now, Derek, is it's configuring the Octopus server node. It's creating the service. It's connected to the database. It's then going to create all the tables for the database as well. I'm sure you've seen this many times when installing a Windows installation.
Yeah, it's honestly, when I think about it, how many times over the years I've probably installed Octopus. I won't lie, it's probably in the thousands. And this is the thing though, I think this is what that is really useful though, is you don't have to then spin up a virtual machine to then spin up or to speak to a database administrator, to get your database, or they need to then find the right server, is it dedicated, is it shared? You've done this. What can sometimes take weeks or even months, you've done in a few minutes. I think that's one of the reasons I absolutely love containers. Although definitely need to do a bit more. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. When I obviously I'm going through these variables just to explain them. When you get this and you get your hands on these resources, just a few changes of the variables, and you're away within minutes.
That's it.
I'm just gonna.
I think as well though is people who are new to Octopus as well. They could quite easily, say for instance, grab a copy of the database from production, and then import it. Which I don't always give too much away, but obviously import it and then run it locally, so that then you can even run it in isolation, so that obviously it doesn't connect to your production network, so that people can play about and get a bit more hands on.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. And while I was chatting there, I wanted to find the master key. As I said, when you create a new Octopus Deploy database, you will get the master key. If you don't have it, you can get it from the Linux container. There is there's a DLL called Octopus Server that you can use to show the master key. But do your best to keep that as safe as possible. That is going to decrypt your database. So keep that nice and secure. I'm just going to take a note of this for now, just while it's there. I don't
think you
forget.
got a space there at the end.
Oh, you have. I want to take it out and brilliant. It's taken out. Good eyes, Derek. Cool. Okay, so that should be up and running. Let's just check Docker Desktop. We can see now those images, they're in use. You can see our containers. Yeah, up and running. Cool. So what I'm going to do, reopen Octopus on port 80. So let's go host. Excellent. So this is our container. So let's jump in, admin, use my superficial password. Oh, we're in. I don't want to say that password, no. Let's check the version. Yeah, so we're on 2020.6. I'm just going to create a project in there just to kind of show us upgrading this afterwards. My test. Let's save. Cool. So that's a container up and running. So that was pretty quick.
Pretty quick. I was like,
yeah, definitely. So what I'm going to do now, Derek, I'm going to upgrade that. One of the use cases that I love about the container. Now, you might not be able to run. You may have some stipulation where you can't use containers yet, or Kubernetes, so you can't take advantage of the new Linux container. You have to stick on Windows. That's perfectly fine. What other use cases can we think of where you can use a container? The perfect one for me is, especially I use this in Octopus. I'm currently on 2020.6. I want to check out the new features with my current database to make sure it all works. You could use the container locally with your database and upgrade that without actually touching production. That's another great use case.
definitely. I love that use case because that's the thing though is, when before when we were doing monthly releases, doing the upgrades, where they were fairly small in size.
Mhm.
Now obviously with the quarterly releases, cloud, etc. I think like that it is just that it's nice to validate the upgrade, so that you can go through and validate and make sure that the real data that you're using in your Octopus database still works when you move to your new version, 2020 1.1 for instance.
Yeah, definitely. But that's currently just running in interactive mode. So when I come out of this terminal, it's going to kind of turn off the containers. You can run it detached, so it runs in the background. I just haven't got that set up. It's just running interactive at the moment. So as soon as I go out of the terminal, it should. There we go. It should shut off the containers. That's fine because I double clicked. So what I want to do now is upgrade that database. So we don't need the license key anymore. We've already registered that. It's already in the database. What we do need is the master key. Because we're going to spin up another container and connect it to the same database, Octopus Deploy, in the same container, we need the master key to be able to decrypt the database to actually upgrade it. Remember, I took the master key before. The camera pointed out the space. That's now gone. So what we need to do next is actually change the tag. So I'm just going to get the latest. I'm going to save that. And what I'm going to do is just run the same command. Build the new container, Octopus Deploy version container.
So obviously, like you're saying, you don't actually have to store the license key because that's already in the database.
Yeah. Yes.
Because that's not something, when we do the upgrade using say a virtual machine, you do it is just the same thing as well. So when you do it using a UI or even Chocolate, etc., unless it's an in place upgrade, then you do need to specify the master key. You actually have to do that as well with HA as well, even when you're adding that second node. So that's just certainly something to be aware of.
Yeah, so it's like say it's detected the database there. Now it's not going to upgrade that. Yeah, it's pretty much the same as like the in-place upgrades of the Windows machine.
Yeah. So, Adam, question for you just now.
Mhm.
We're also waiting that to upgrade. Obviously, as you put in the master key as part of the upgrade, as that's a value that you need to decrypt the database and sensitive variables within that. What happens if you try to do an upgrade using Docker, but you didn't specify the master key?
If you didn't specify the master key,
Yeah.
this will fail. Essentially, it will fail. It won't be. I'm not sure in terms of details whether it'll connect to the database, but it's certainly if the master key doesn't match the database that you're connecting to, it will fail.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
that's
think
a little bit of extra security there.
Yeah, I think the biggest tip that I would give you is back up your master key, back it
Yeah.
up again, and then back it up a third time.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and obviously when you're running, obviously if you're running Docker Compose or you've got it in Kubernetes, you store that master key in some kind of secret management, or if it's not person, a secure variable, a sensitive
Definitely.
variable.
So it looks like it's upgraded.
Yep, there we go. So I'm just gonna. Oh, that's our existing one. Let's just refresh that. There, it should sign it back in.
Got to love that whistling cowboy.
There you go. My favorite one. Cool. So yes, so you can see my test project. I'm back in. Let's check the version. Yeah, we can see there 2021.1. So that's it's a very simple demo. I'm just showing you how to deploy the Octopus container to a local Docker desktop, and then upgrade that. Cool. So what we're going to do now, we're going to get the Octopus container image, and we're going to publish that up to a Kubernetes cluster running in Azure Kubernetes Service. Very familiar to us, the AKS, isn't it, Derek? It's where all our cloud is running.
Yeah, that's on AKS. That's where all of our. I think we've got what about 3,000 customers or something like that using it just now. And we've got
Yes.
distributed across the world as well now. So yeah, little bit of a backstory actually about Octopus Cloud is that we launched 3 years ago this month. It's almost kind of epic that it is 3 years on. That here we're doing a webinar using the Linux container. Because when you think about it, the idea, even back then, to run Octopus um, on Linux, is just to me, even back then, that was kind of bizarre because we
Mm.
launched it on AWS using virtual machines and RDS for the back end and, all that sort of good stuff. And then obviously I joined not long after um, with Octopus Cloud just launched. In actual fact, fun little fact, I use Octopus Cloud to do a demo of Octopus to Paul as part of the interview process. Terrifying. However, one of the cool things was about 18 months ago, that's when we made the switch over to AKS. And things have been so much stabler. We've actually, it's not super expensive to run as well. That's one of the things,
Mm.
with VMs, it's very expensive to run, and they do
Yeah.
tend to be quite long lived versus a container, which can be quite short lived. I think that's where there's some of the benefits here. But yeah, we're running on AKS now, using Linux containers, using Elastic SQL pools and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and obviously, like the byproduct of all that is, um, you know, we get to pass that container image on to our customers now,
Yeah,
so they can use it. And it's not just, but we're focusing here on the Octopus container server. But obviously, you can run the tentacles as containers as well.
yeah,
Maybe that's a future demonstration.
definitely.
Okay, cool. So first of all, I have got some of this stuff already set up. Um, I have my Octopus cluster running in AKS. These do take a while to spin up, so I definitely had to have this ready beforehand. I'm just going to jump into the resource group because what we do a little bit different this time is when the Octopus container locally was using kept into a SQL container. That wouldn't normally be the case, especially for this in production. You need durable storage and a durable SQL database. That's resilient. What I'm using for the SQL database this time, I'm using SQL Server as a Service from Azure, and I'm using the Azure file storage for my artifacts and all the amount of volumes that we talked about earlier. So see that there. What we're going to do, go back into there. I've got a different workspace now. Rather than the Docker Compose YAML, what we can see, we've got all these other YAML files. These are what we're going to use to deploy to the Kubernetes cluster in Azure. So let's need to get one thing just open. About that. So we can see the first YAML. We can basically just putting a volume claim for artifacts, the cache, an import folder, and the persistent, the task logs as well. So what we do is just check the Octopus server service. This is the load balancer service to kind of direct traffic on port 80 for the web console and 109.43 for the deployment target communication. And then we've got the public version of that. So we want to be able to access this externally. I want to share this with Derek, so I want to be able to access it outside of Azure. And then last of this is our Octopus server deployment YAMLs. This is what we're actually going to deploy the container. So let's quickly just not quickly go through this, but talk about some of the parameters. So again, we've got all the environment variables. They're not in a separate file this time; they're just assigned into that into the raw YAML. What you'll notice different this time is the server. So the server that I'm connecting to is the SQL container, not the SQL container. Apologies. The SQL as a service in Azure. As you can see there, container web.database.net. And I've got my license key in there and the Octopus Deploy image again. I'm just going to pull the latest image. Ports, again, 8080 and 109.43, and we're mounting those volume mounts to Azure storage. Yes. Cool. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to use kubectl to actually deploy this to our cluster. So fun fact, you can use Octopus to deploy these raw YAML files to Kubernetes. So we could have Octopus deploy Octopus. That demo would take a little bit longer to get set up. So what I'm going to do is just, before I do that, I'm going to change the directory I'm in. We're going to go remote Octopus.
It's funny, kubectl always catches me. I don't know
Yes.
why. I always put an R in between the T and the L. I don't ask me why, but it's just a thing.
I'm very surprised I've just got that one right first time.
It's a wonderful
So it's probably worth saying. So in this terminal, I've already authenticated with Azure and selected my Azure subscription and the default cluster. So don't thinking I'm just connecting to this with no credentials. It's already kind of done in the terminal. And what it's going to do, the kubectl apply, it's going to apply all those YAML files in that Kubernetes folder into that cluster. So yeah, okay. Now
It can't be that straightforward, surely, Adam.
It is. It's a very basic setup of demonstration of publishing to a Kubernetes cluster. We haven't put replicas in there. It's just a single container running in one pod. So it's nothing too complicated. Still, it does get a little bit more complicated in terms of the orchestration of it. But this one, no, it's very simple.
No, that's really cool. That's really cool.
So probably worth saying at this point, it's now going to start creating that Octopus container image. It is 4 gig, so it's going to take a little while to get that up and running.
So, whilst that's happening, actually, I've got a few questions for you, just that I want answered. So you can do this on Azure, on AWS as well, can't you? You don't. This
Yes.
doesn't just work on Azure.
Yeah. So you've so AWS, you've got the Kubernetes service in there as well, and you've also got ECS and Fargate. You can put that container in there as well.
Awesome. So yeah, no. So I think that's one of the things that I like about containers. Really, it doesn't matter for the most part. Whether it's running on Azure, Google, AWS. Your basement. Ultimately, it runs the same place. I think really the difference is you need to have things like persistent storage, and that's one of the things that's funny is SQL containers, you can use that with Azure SQL. There is now an option within Azure SQL, which is a platform as a service, to have containerized databases. That is funny because obviously you can run Octopus as a container, but you do want something that's probably still persistent for your database storage and your file level storage and all that sort of good stuff.
Oh yes, yeah, definitely. You know, things that need to be durable, like the SQL service and all those volume mounts I mentioned earlier, the artifacts, they need to come some durable storage that's backed up as well.
Yeah, and this would run on Azure container instances as well, so it doesn't need to
Yes.
be Kubernetes. You can,
Now,
if you're locked into Azure, you can use alternative
yeah, I think the beauty of for us for AKS is it's where we're running our cloud. Where we've got the most noise. That's why I've chosen this platform.
One thing I did
Oh well.
notice in your configuration for AKS, there was a reference to compose with a K. Could you tell us a little bit about that versus Docker compose with a C?
Yeah, definitely. I'm just gonna just throw up my Visual Studio. Yes, funny story around this. Somebody asked about this on a previous webinar. I thought it was mistyped at first. I've never heard of Compose with a K, and it's a tool supplied by Kubernetes themselves. What it can do is it'll look at a Docker Compose YAML file and convert it for Kubernetes. So it'll convert this Docker Compose file into these YAML files that you see here that are compatible with Kubernetes. So that's how I actually did that. So I didn't actually create these YAML files myself. I just used the Compose exit to convert the Docker Compose YAML into these Kubernetes YAML files.
And it
It's a great
worked.
little tool.
That's great. No, that's great. I won't lie, this is the first time I've heard about it. That sounds really awesome.
This should nearly be spinning up.
Far now. I have to say though, I think that's the thing that I love about Kubernetes though is it's just so much. We seem to like adding in layers. Where before most of the layers, 15 years ago was the layers that you generally referenced was your network layers. Now we've got
Hmm.
layers within layers within layers, and it's interesting, but it brings a different type of complexity I find to IT.
Cool. So that's the container up and running. We'll just go back. We can see there. I see the image Octopus Deploy latest. We can see our volumes, the environment variables that we used. So what we're going to do now is just go back to the load balancer so I can access this. You can see the web load balancer. Grab this IP. Remember we did that on port 8080. I'll load up, log in, and use that super safe password one last time. I can log in.
That's awesome.
Excellent.
That is
Yeah.
awesome.
I'll say that's not a deep dive into Kubernetes, but it just shows how simple it is to get that container up there.
I
So
honestly,
that can, yeah,
I honestly, that was really straightforward. I'm really surprised how quickly that's just went from something that you obviously had locally to something in the cloud, hosting on AKS.
yeah,
That was
it's worth it.
fantastic.
It's worth noting as well. So this is a different container, different database in terms of AKS. But when you get the recording, you see it on YouTube. I'm going to put links to all the resources to create these the AKS cluster, the Docker Compose files that we talked about, and the Kubernetes YAML. So it'll be a little step-by-step guide to get all this up and running yourself.
Yeah, and definitely the thing is as well is that what I would say here is it's not this isn't a one-to-one to Docker or Kubernetes.
Mhm.
There's loads of great resources. This is really just about running the Octopus Linux container um, on Kubernetes or Docker, etc. So
Yeah.
by all means, you may need some additional training, but see, to be honest, I think like that our documentation is really great, and it will take you through and how to configure all of this.
Yeah, it's probably worth just highlighting that for them. You can see they got the Octopus Linux container, plenty of information on there on the container itself. So not just on the Docker Hub page, in our docs, we've got the
Yeah, and there's
information
a
on the
Docker
container as well.
101 as well. Not on our website, but if you check out the Docker 101, then that's definitely something that you can do as well. There's so many
Yeah,
great resources out there. If you do want to understand more about Docker, Kubernetes, I would definitely jump onto things like Pluralsight, Kubernetes,
mm,
etc.io. There's so many resources out there. And also, we do also have other webinars where we talk about Kubernetes. Like I did one last year with Sean. That's more about deploying to Kubernetes from Octopus. But Adam, that was fantastic. Thank you very much.
yeah, cool. Yeah, so that wraps up my free demos. Hopefully, people have learned something and see how easy it is to get the Octopus container.
Yeah, that was I learned stuff. And honestly, that was
So,
fantastic. Okay, so let's jump over and see if there's any questions. Okay, Adam. So we do have a few questions. There's been a few answered as we're going. Just one thing, all the resources from today's webinar, including the repository and all the YAML files, we will send that on as part of the email. So we'll send you an email next week with a link to the recording, and with the recording, we'll put the repository with all the YAML files and all that great stuff will be there. Okay, so we've got some questions. First thing I'd like to say is really sorry about the issues with Zoom. It is something we're trying to work with Zoom on. It is something that we are improving, and YouTube has actually been working really well. But whilst we do that, let's jump in. What sort of storage types are supported by Docker when using the file mounts, Adam? Is that something you can share with us?
yeah, it's a great question. So in terms of my experience, obviously we've not tested Octopus Linux container with all the different storage types out there. When I talk about Azure and AWS and Google, all I'd recommend is what I did in that demo there. I ran a single container instance. You know, you're probably going to be running multiple containers. So as long as the storage is durable and shared between all the containers, and the storage allows write from the container, you should be good.
Excellent, excellent. So obviously, I think that with the master key, I think we did cover that in the webinar. But what happens if you were upgrading without specifying that master key?
Yeah, if you try to spin up another container on top of an existing Octopus database, if you point at the same database without a master key, it's going to fail because Octopus needs that master key to be able to decrypt the existing SQL database. So yeah, when you do create a container, make sure you keep that master key safe and back it up and back it up again.
Yeah. So obviously, when we started, we did release a Windows container. What's happening with that?
Okay, so that has been now deprecated. The reasons I believe the take up of the Windows container wasn't huge, and Microsoft actually deprecated the Windows images that it was based on. So we've taken the option to actually deprecate the Windows container. So if you are on that, it's probably a good idea to kind of move over to Linux, the Linux container. That will stop working for all versions going forward. So the latest build of 2020.6 and anything in 2021.1. It's a good question, and we have just created some migration docs. So if you were running the Windows container and you need to move over to the Linux one, there are some differences between the Windows and Linux container. Not huge, but things like the folder path and the folder structure in Windows compared to Linux is different. And the pre-installed software on both containers. So the Windows container actually included PowerShell, .NET 4.7 and 4.8, and not Bash. Whereas the Linux container actually includes PowerShell Core and Bash. So with Octopus, the Octopus server comes with a built-in worker. So if you've been using the built-in worker to run PowerShell scripts, Some of those, if they are not .NET Core, PowerShell Core compatible, what we do recommend is if you do migrate over to Linux container, before you do so, create a new Windows worker that you can attach to the Linux container that includes .NET, the PowerShell and .NET 4.7 and 4.8, just so the Linux container will still work properly, but rather than using the built-in Linux worker, you actually use a Windows worker, so that won't actually affect any of your scripts or current deployment processes. We've actually created some documentation on that, and I'll send that out after the webinar as well. I can see.
Yeah. So it looks like the migration from a Windows container to a Linux container is possible, which is really good.
Yeah.
Do you have any information on how you can move from your virtual machine hosted instance to a Linux container?
Yeah, great question again. And it's probably following the same kind of migration I've just mentioned there. You're coming from a Windows machine to a Linux machine. So things like the folder structure and paths are going to be different. That's actually a question. That document we've got up on screen there at the moment is migrating from Octopus Server Linux container from the Windows container. We can actually change that and also do that from Octopus Server on a Windows virtual machine to move into a Linux container. So it's pretty much the same with what I've just mentioned. There are some guides and docs on migrating the database as well. So yeah, we'll get those touched up and sent out afterwards.
Excellent. Question. Obviously, both of us recently have been working on the new HA docs. So this is actually a question for me. Can we run the Linux containers in HA using Docker Compose? And if so, what components would change?
Yes, so it's certainly possible to run the Octopus container or image in HA. It's not something we're currently doing at Octopus, but something we're looking to trying to achieve fairly soon. In terms of what I've just done there, I've just used, especially on the first demo, I used a SQL Linux container, and I was just used as a storage attached to the Octopus server container. In terms of what would change is you would need some durable storage that will be shared across multiple containers. So if we're talking Azure, Azure file storage, and then also a shared database, whether you use a SQL database as a service or something that's durable and highly available. And so they're the two things that will probably change.
Yeah, no, I think that's the thing. I think that with anything, it's I think that's one of the things with containers. It's great that everything can be torn down, but there's always going to be certain things which need to persist. And I think like that, you need your files to persist along with your database. Obviously, I think I mentioned it earlier on as well, but obviously you can host the database using Azure SQL. There is a container version of that. I've not really used it, so it's just something to be aware of. The thing I was a little bit skeptical was unknown performance, so it's definitely something to check out. And obviously, you did do a demo using Azure Kubernetes Service, but I'm assuming that you can quite easily run this on AWS, the Elastic Kubernetes Service, and the container service. That would be fairly straightforward, Adam, wouldn't it?
Yes, definitely. I've actually done some tests. I've actually got Octopus running in ECS. So yes, yeah, that's certainly possible.
Awesome. And also, obviously, we were talking about AWS, but just to confirm, Azure Container Instances would also work?
Yes, I can imagine so. I've not used it, but yeah, I can't see why you couldn't use that to host the Octopus container.
Awesome. One last question. One of the things that you obviously were talking about is execution containers when it was like Docker and Docker. Again, kind of talking about the layers of how much we love it. On that, can you also run the tentacle or a worker as a container as well?
Yes, great question. So yes, you can have the Octopus server run as a container. You can also containerize the Octopus tentacle and worker. So yeah, you can definitely do that.
Excellent, excellent. Well, that's all that the questions. I'm just going to check YouTube. No questions on YouTube. Let me just check community Slack. We have no questions. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap up. The first thing I'd like to do is just thank you so much, Adam, for that presentation. I learned a bunch, which is great. Thank you so
No
much.
problem. No problem at all.
Just a thank you to everyone who attended. A recording of the webinar will be emailed to you out in the next week or so. Chances are it'll be next Monday or Tuesday. We do have some events coming up, talking CI/CD in the cloud with Octopus and Team City Cloud. I'm back on June 30th, July 1st, and the 5th of July with Marco from the developer advocate team at JetBrains. And then I'm back with Chris Thomas with Clear Measure on July 14th, 15th, and the 19th, talking about some bits. And one thing I just want to do is show off our new events page. So if you come into octopus.com/events, we have just launched a new events page. If you do have any feedback, please reach out to us at advice@octopus.com. So it's just something to be aware. You will be able to see all the recordings and the upcoming ones, as you can see myself and Adam here. So just to tie up, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.